Yes. I titled this video, "Is Spider-Man Brand New Day any good?" And the answer is yes. I feel like the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been very hit or miss lately, with a lot more misses than hits. But Spider-Man is one of those rare Marvel franchises that just hits every time. I don't know if it's because it's a Sony movie and not 100% Marvel, but whatever they're doing, it's working. So I'll give a spoiler-free rundown of the movie, plus a non-spoiler review before I get into the more spoily stuff. Basically, Spider-Man is depressed, living on his own, watching his friends go to college without him, now that Doctor Strange's spell from the end of the last movie has erased everyone's memories of him. And he's working with the police to stop crime throughout New York City. However, once a threat that can hop between people and possess them starts doing crime and going after Peter, he ends up having to reconnect with his old friends to keep them safe. And also he hangs out with the Punisher now. Speaking of the Punisher, I loved having him in this movie because him and Peter were a great comedic duo. The contrasting personalities of Spider-Man, who's like optimistic, doesn't want to hurt people, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, versus the kill everything that gets in my way, solve all my problems with guns Punisher, makes their scenes a lot of fun to watch. I haven't seen the Punisher show. I think it is a show, but I'm assuming Frank's character is accurate to his show, and there were more crossovers in this movie with other Marvel characters too. Like from the trailers, you can see that Yelena's gonna be in this movie. She's from the Thunderbolts, and then there's Bruce Banner, who's of course the Hulk. And Marvel likes to do a lot of those gratuitous cameos, where it's like a character shows up for 5 minutes, just to promote some other movie that may or may not be coming soon, and it feels like they're an afterthought to the script. But it's not like that in this movie. Bruce Banner actually ends up playing a somewhat major role in the story without feeling like he shifts the focus of the movie off of Spider-Man. Yelena has a smaller part that falls closer to that gratuitous category, but she still provides useful information that moves the plot forward. So I also enjoyed the conflicts in this movie. I feel like now that the MCU is almost 20 years old, they're trying to branch out and create more complex stories and conflicts to keep people interested. And I think the Spider-Man movie does it very well. Like there's Peter's internal conflict over watching his friends go on with their lives without him and trying to decide whether or not he should like re-enter their lives, like will they still be in danger? And that actually manifests itself into a physical problem that he has to solve as well, as Peter gets some new powers and goes through this sort of metamorphosis that seems to be tied to his emotional state. And his solution to this physical manifestation of his problem ends up being the key to pacifying one of this movie's antagonists, the one that does the possession. And you will see there's also a secondary antagonist, which you'll probably notice the instant they start talking. They just sound like a villain. So the focus of the conflict shifts throughout the movie as events are reframed through different characters' perspectives and new information gets to Peter. I'm trying to be as spoiler-free as possible, but long story short, I like the plot and it was not super basic. I like the plot, I like Spider-Man's new suit, like the red really pops. And I like that while the tone was generally heavy, Spider-Man brought some levity with his jokes. I liked the antagonist and generally thought it was a great Spider-Man movie. Last non-spoilery point, there is one after credits scene, but it's short and I don't really understand what it means, so you probably don't need to stick around to see it. I don't know, maybe that'll save you like 5 minutes at the movie theater, I don't know. Anyway, spoiler time. So if you're watching this section, it means you've seen the movie or you don't care about spoilers. So you've been warned. First off, I want to say Jean Grey was great. She's always been one of the scarier X-Men to fight with her psychic powers, so making her the antagonist was kind of crazy. I love seeing how this movie presents an alternate timeline where Xavier's school doesn't exist, because in this version there's an organization called Damage Control that's looking to take Jean and her sister's powers so they can replicate them, kidnapping her sister to experiment on her. And there's no X-Men to protect her, so she's dealing with this problem on her own. Well, at least until Spider-Man comes along. So Jean's main power in this movie is to jump between people and possess them, but she can only do it within a certain radius, so she will like jump from one person to the next in a sort of chain reaction type thing. I love how that's visualized in the movie. Because in the scene where Jean first enters the movie, you have this tank that's being driven through the streets of New York into a prison to free Scorpion. But when they open it up, there's a clueless old lady inside, which means this is a problem that they can't solve with their fists, which is kind of unique in a superhero movie. And I think Sadie Sink does a great job of playing Jean. I'm a big Sadie Sink fan, but I still haven't seen season 5 of Stranger Things. Sorry. Anyway, speaking of fists, the fight scenes in this movie were great. I love how creatively Spider-Man uses his powers in these fights and how well choreographed they are. Like, there's this one scene where Spider-Man is fighting the hand and he flips onto the ceiling and the camera flips with him. So he's still fighting right side up. And there's a lot of cool little stuff like that in this movie that gives it a little bit of spice. On the subject of fighting, that Spider-Man and Hulk scene though. Hulk and Spider-Man were two of my favorite heroes when I was a kid, and we have not had a good Hulk fight since the Avengers. Like, literally 14 years ago. For the most recent movies, he's been stuck in this weird half Banner, half Hulk state that's kind of lame. So when he fully hulked out in this movie and started going crazy, I was about ready to jump out of my seat. But moving on from the fight scenes, I love the chase scene where Jean was jumping between people, racing Spider-Man to MJ after figuring out his identity. Spider-Man gets to MJ first, and it seems like he saves her. And they kiss, and it's like this memory curse has been lifted, and she remembers him. And I'm just sitting there thinking, nah, this is too easy. I don't like the way this is shot. It's like the ball's gonna drop at any moment. And when it finally does, and Jean reveals that she is possessing MJ, it feels a bit predictable, but also still really brutal for Peter. Second to last thing I wanted to touch on was Frank's role in the story. Like, his purpose in the story is to contrast Spider-Man's way of doing things, which leads to this inevitable conclusion where Peter has talked with Jean and is basically like, I know what it's like to experience loss like you did, and throughout the movie, learn to embrace it and move on, build a better life with the people I have left instead of shutting them out to protect them. So I'll be your friend and let's work things out together. And Frank's like, 360 no scope, pew pew pew. And Peter ends up having to take a bullet to protect Jean. And even though Frank means well, we see how his violent methods almost cost us Spider-Man, whereas Spider-Man's selfless act saves Jean's life and has a positive influence on her as she uses her powers to keep Peter alive when he's in the hospital. So I just have to say, I know Peter and Frank are friends, but who thought it was a good idea to let Frank into Peter's hospital room after he shot him? Like, do the police just not care? And for real, the last thing this time. Jean spends this movie looking for this thing called VMAX, which after her sister was captured by damage control, she beamed that phrase into Jean's mind. And after Jean is captured by damage control and put in the same room that Sarah was for experimentation, she looks up and sees a vent that says Vent Max, except the ENT is peeling off. So it looks like VMAX. And Jean realizes Sarah beamed her that phrase because that's the last thing she saw before she died. She was just staring at that vent in the ceiling, which is really tragic, but also a remarkably well done setup and payoff in the script. I was expecting it to be some sort of secret government project or MacGuffin for the movie, so to have it just be something emotionally tied to the character is not a level of writing I was expecting from a Marvel movie. And yeah, I don't really have anything negative to say about this movie. I liked pretty much everything about it. Sony just doesn't miss when it comes to Spider-Man. We don't need to talk about all those Spider-Man villain spin-offs though. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to Spider-Man returning eventually. So thank you all for watching my rambling. I hope all of this made sense because I just wrote down my thoughts on the movie over the course of like 3 days and just kind of hoped that it was coherent. Also, make sure to check out my shorts. I've started making shorts with memes about the movies I review, but other than that, I guess subscribe and have a great day. Bye-bye.